The EQ, one of the most fundamental building blocks of mixing music, yet it can be so hard to learn. I spent a long time trying to understand how to EQ properly, and I made the journey to mastering it way longer than it needed to be. If you don't want to make the same mistakes that I was making and you're looking to master EQ, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you just how simple EQ can be, and I'm even going to throw in a few secret techniques for you. So what does an EQ actually do? Basically, an EQ is a tool used to either boost or cut specific frequencies within a sound. Now you may ask what the purpose of this is. The short answer is to create balance in your mix. I'll go in depth on creating balance in your mix a little bit later, but first I need to show you the basic controls of an EQ. You can see these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are called bands. So if I click and hold one of these and drag it around, you can see that this graph is changing because of that. I said graph, and the reason I say that is that's how I always think of an EQ. Because down here, we have the lowest frequencies, like your bass. And then up here, we have the highest frequencies, like hi-hats or something like that. As you work your way from here to here, the frequencies get higher and higher. So if I were to want to boost high frequencies on something, I would grab one of these bands and do it up here, not down here. Now the last thing to really think about is the bandwidth, or sometimes called the Q value. There's a few names for it. If I bring number 6 all the way up here, right, you can see how broad of a spectrum it's boosting. Like it's literally boosting almost the whole signal from low mids all the way up to here. Sometimes you don't want to do that. So you can adjust the Q value by hovering over and using your mouse to scroll. And you can see that you can take the bandwidth really narrow. So now it's only boosting this short frequency rather than a broad boost like this. This is really useful for cutting out very specific frequencies rather than, again, something broad like this. Now, two useful terms to be familiar with are high pass and low pass. So a high pass is basically taking out everything in the low end. It's called a high pass because it's letting the highs pass through the EQ. A low pass would be the complete opposite, where it's cutting out all the high frequencies and allowing the lows to pass through. Low pass. You'll just hear those terms thrown at you a lot. So now you're probably still confused on why we want to do this. And so I've prepared a little demonstration that I'm going to show you. So in this scenario, we have a beat and a vocal that we're trying to mix together, right? Now pretend these boxes are like your EQ window. So in a beat, you're going to have a lot of bass, and then you're going to have a lot of mid-range presence, a lot of high presence. Pretty much all the frequencies in a beat are just full, right? A vocal is going to look something more like this. It's going to have a little less bass, decent mid-range presence, a lot of presence right here. Then it kind of comes back down. Now, obviously, this is not perfect, but as you can see, if you're trying to mix a vocal with a beat, pretty much both of them have their full frequency spectrum filled up, and so it can be a little hard to get them to blend together. All right, so I want to point something out. And this is true for most vocals. Most of the time you don't want to use EQ visually, but for this demonstration I'm going to kind of show you. So if you look right here, there's kind of this big spike. Like if you look, this is the highest point in the EQ right here. So a lot of the vocal is existing in this range, and we have a lot going on in the same range in the beat. One solution to this is to actually try to EQ some of these frequencies out of the beat to carve room for the vocal. So I'm going to use blue here for EQ. If you have your EQ and it's flat, pretend there's a band here, you would want to probably take this band and dip it down something like this, not that far, but by a couple decibels. And what this will do, it will carve out the frequencies right here in the beat and create room for the most energetic part of the vocal to sit in. So I'm going to erase a little bit of this and show you what the frequencies after EQ would look like. It would probably be more something like this. See how it dips down? And that allows the vocal to sit in this frequency pocket, basically. All right, so we're going to look at another example between a bass and a synth. Obviously, the bass is going to be really energetic up here, and then it's probably gonna start tapering down. So a synth is gonna have some bass, and then it's gonna get really energetic up in the mid-range and up in the high frequencies. Most of the bass is existing right here, and most of the synth is existing up here, but the synth still does have this bass down in this area. And so what can happen is these frequencies down here can start clashing with the bass where it's trying to sit. And also the bass still has frequencies up in the higher end that'll clash with the synth over here. So you can make a low pass filter on this, something like this, and basically carve out all these frequencies, erase all these, and just keep the bass. And then on the synth you could do the same thing. If this is your EQ, you could create a high pass filter that takes away some of these frequencies. That'll allow the bass and the synth to sit with each other a little bit better. Now obviously you can't mix everything visually like this. A lot of this is just done by ear, but there is some stuff when you're mixing that you just need to look at it and say, oh, this synth has bass, we need to get rid of it so the bass can breathe. All right, so now that we understand that, let's take a look at a real world example. This is one of my songs I'm working on. It looks like there's a lot going on in the project, but pretty much all that we have is the beat up here, and then we have a bunch of vocal tracks. So right now I'm gonna play my raw vocals, and I absolutely hate doing this, but for the purpose of this video, here you are. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. So you can hear that they're really drowned out in the mix. There's just a lot of problems, okay? Now the purpose of this video is to teach EQ, and there's a lot more to mixing. So what I'm gonna do is just throw on one of my presets. That way I don't have to sit here and mix the whole vocal. And then I'm just gonna adjust the EQ on the preset. Now there's a few tweaks that need to be done, but this is sort of what a fully mixed vocal would sound like with EQ. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. By the way, if you want to get this preset, I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, we're going to take off both EQs, and then you can hear what that sounds like. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get. Now the compressors are really helping it pop. So if I take the compressors off, now you're going to hear like how bad the situation really is. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. You got to remember that we're trying to mix the beat and the vocals together. And so we can actually prepare the beat to mix vocals in it. So what I've done is I took a dynamic EQ, which is, it's basically just an EQ, but it can automatically adjust stuff. So like I can set a threshold on certain bands and tell it like, if this frequency gets above this volume, then I want you to reduce it, is basically all that does. So if you look, when I play the beat, you'll see this band right here dipping. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. If you remember from the demonstration earlier, I said that a lot of the vocal sits in this pocket up here. And so that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm taking this EQ and the beat and carving out room for the vocal to sit. So now that we have room for the vocal carved out, now we can go and adjust this EQ. So just pay attention to what's going on down here. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. We have a lot of information down here, but the human ear actually can't hear that. So I'm gonna take a high pass filter and I'm gonna EQ some of these frequencies out. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. And I swear I tried. The beat has a lot of energy in the low mids in the mid area. So I want to take a little bit of that out of the vocal and allow the beat to kind of breathe in that area. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. And then remember, we had carved out a pocket over here for the vocal to sit in, and it's still not popping out. So we can actually boost this a little bit over here for it to sit in that pocket. So now I'm going to enable these compressors, and these introduce some bad frequencies sometimes. So that's what the second EQ does, is take those out. So now listen to it with the compressors on. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. So one of the problems I'm noticing is a lot of harshness up in this area. There's just too much high end. So I'm going to dip that by quite a bit, actually, almost 2 decibels up in the high end. Because there was just a little bit too much going on. And then I think I hear some boxiness somewhere down here. To test it, you can take one of these bands and boost it, and then kind of narrow it down and sweep back and forth and listen for bad frequencies. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. And I swear So it's definitely that. So we're going to dip that down. So right there, I was just listening for bad frequencies and dipping them out. to clean up the vocal a little bit. Some of those low ends came back, not too much, but I'm still going to take them out. So now we come over here and take off both EQs and listen to it before and after. You will be shocked at these results.
Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up. Yeah, flashback to all them days with the fake love. Now I'm finding different ways to get my feet up.
So there's more of a real world example of how you could use EQ to carve out frequencies and allow two things in a mix to sit well with each other. In this case, it was a full beat and a vocal. Don't forget, if you want this preset, it's in the description. And also, I have a Fiverr page that I will mix your vocals for you. Go ahead and check that out as well.